Welcome to the Downtown Action Committee for Thursday, October 10th. Welcome, and if we could kindly start with roll call.
Roger Jansen.
Present.
Nick Mihulich.
Present.
Brian Shakwas. Let the record reflect that Brian Shakwas is not present. Stephen Graham.
Present.
Michael Cuevas.
Present.
David Felton. Let the record reflect that David Felton is not present. Brian McPherson.
Present.
Thank you. Next, you have minutes from the, let's see, which meeting? September 11th hearing. Does anyone have any comments or additions or deletions or corrections?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 11th, 2019 meeting.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the minutes approved. Item 3, report from City Urban Designer, Ms. Aponte.
I don't have anything to report this morning.
Okay, I'll do the same. So ex parte communications, anyone on the commission had any ex parte communication on today's cases? Seeing none, we'll move forward. And today, if anyone is here that will be presenting testimony on any of these cases, kindly stand and be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, thanks. So we'll go ahead and move forward to our first case for today. Downtown Action Committee case number 19-09, city-initiated request for deck review and recommendation by City Commission for streetscape improvements to Banyan Boulevard between Australian and Flagler. I suppose you're...
Good morning, Ana Maria Ponte, City Urban Designer for the record. As it was mentioned, this is a case for the DAC to provide recommendations for the proposed streetscape design for Banyan Boulevard. Banyan Boulevard, as you guys know, it's one of the two entrances to the downtown. If you access the downtown or try to access downtown from I-95, you go Okeechobee Boulevard and you can go straight on Okeechobee Boulevard, or you basically move north and go to Banyan Boulevard. So it's a very, very important connector for us to access the downtown, and it has a lot of traffic that goes into the downtown area. Unfortunately, the way it is designed right now and how it looks is not the most appealing and interesting entrance for our downtown. So considering this, the city has given priority to the redesign of Banyan Boulevard to make it a prominent entrance and enhance the pedestrian and also the vehicular and bicycle experience for people entering the downtown area. The project is part of the bond that was issued, or it will be funded by the bond that was issued in July this year, 99 million bond by the CRA, and the current project is budgeted at 15.4 million. The city has retained the services for WGI as a design project manager and Whiting Turner as a construction project manager. So they are already doing design development and construction documents at this point, and the project is expected to start next year. The scope of work includes all the streetscape from Australian Avenue to Flagler Drive, approximately 1.25 miles. The representatives from WGI are here, and they're going to conduct the presentation explaining what the project entails. And after that, staff will come back to make our recommendations for some few things that we're considering important to add to the project.
Hello, good morning. Angela Biaggi with WGI. As Anna Maria mentioned, this project is a partnership between the city and the CRA. WGI is doing the design drawings, and Whiting Turner will be doing the construction project management. This project really started as just a resurfacing project. The road is in pretty bad condition, but as we were doing our analysis, we realized that this was a really good opportunity to also include safety and beautification improvements, as well as implement some of the recommendations from the city's mobility plan. Again, the project limits are from Australian to Flagler, the entire length of the limits of the road, and from right-of-way to right-of-way. Our three main goals of this project were really safety, first and foremost, and also beautification and connectivity. From a safety standpoint, we're looking at separating the pedestrian, the cyclist, and the automobile facilities. We're doing this through an elevated cycle track that's at the sidewalk level. I'll show some details of that later. As well as traffic calming elements, new lighting, updates to the ADA facilities, new crosswalks, and new traffic signals. We're improving connectivity between the northwest neighborhood and the downtown through improvements to the intersections and crosswalks, as well as between the existing bike lane corridors and facilities. From a beautification standpoint, we're looking at all new landscape and streetscape throughout the corridor. We're incorporating rain gardens to assist with some of the stormwater management issues on the corridor, as well as decorative intersection treatments. So this is a cross-section of some of the proposed improvements. Again, we're looking at new street lighting the entire length of the corridor, decorative street lighting, as well as reducing some of the turn lanes to add planted median strips. The road will stay as 2 lanes in each direction, but we are reducing the width of those lanes in order to incorporate additional planting and the separated bike lanes at the sidewalk level. This is a cross-section of what that would look like. For the majority of the corner, the planting area is going to be at the back of curb, and then we'll have an asphalt cycle track, which goes one way in each direction. There'll be a paver separator between that and the standard concrete sidewalk at the back of the right-of-way limits. We're enhancing the crosswalks at all of the intersections. This is also a pretty heavily used Palm-Tran route, and we're maintaining all of those bus stops. The city has indicated that they'll be coming back at a later date and adding shelters in certain locations along this route as well. This is the corner at Rosemary at the police station plaza. We're also incorporating some hardscape and landscape improvements to that police station plaza. And this intersection in particular will be getting a decorative intersection treatment in addition to the crosswalks. I mentioned the rain gardens, so this will be, again, almost the entire length of the corridor, and these will be swales between the back of the curb and the bike lane. There'll be flumes at designated locations to bring the water in and get it off the road to help with some of the ponding that occurs during heavy rain events. And it'll also hold the water for a period of time to treat it before it goes into the drainage system. Another important component was that we wanted to preserve the black olive trees that are existing between Tamarind and Sapodilla. It's really the only mature existing tree canopy on the corridor. So I'll show you in a minute here that cross-section of that portion of the road is a little different than the others, but those trees will remain in the final design. The landscape, primarily native landscape, the street trees will be predominantly live oaks for the length of the corridor. In the swale or the rain garden areas, we have a mix of low growing ground covers that'll be on the slopes of those areas with some taller native plant material running down the middle. We are incorporating the underground soil cells and or structural soil for all of the large street trees to help with the stability of those trees and improve their long-term health and growth. The hardscape, we're looking at taking a lot of the same materials that are used on Clematis right now. So the bollards, the intersection pavers, and the crosswalk pavers will all be the same paver materials as are on the newly designed sections of Clematis. We are adding some green paver crosswalks for where the cycle track crosses intersections. Street lighting, the decorative street lighting is consistent also with what's on Clematis. And the sidewalk will just be a standard concrete sidewalk. The cycle track will be asphalt, and it'll be separated by a textured paver of a contrasting color. There's really kind of 4 distinct cross sections through the length of the corridor. The first is from Australian to Tamarind, and we are maintaining the center turn lane for the length of that portion of the corridor. Just due to traffic volumes there, that it was not feasible to put in the median. But you can see we've got, and this is consistent throughout, we'll go down to 10-foot lanes, a 4-foot planting area at the back of curb, 5-foot cycle track, and a 5-foot sidewalk. Section B, this is from Tamarin to Sabadia. This is the area where the existing black olives are. So in this section only, the planting remains at the back of the right-of-way instead of at the curb. And in this area, we are able to incorporate a planted median. Moving east from Rosemary to Dixie, this is, again, we go back to the planting at the back of curb with the rain garden and the planted median. And then east of Dixie, the right-of-way reduces from 83 feet to 50 feet. So here we transition to a sharrow from the dedicated cycle track. We're maintaining the existing on-street parking, and we'll have street trees in grates, similar to what is present out there now. This is an aerial view of the block just west of Quadro. We're also doing improvements to the railroad crossing. You can see in yellow, high visibility railroad crossing painting. This is an image of the cycle track and kind of the general depth of what the swale and the rain gardens would look like and the planting scheme. We're looking to complete design plans for this within the month. Additional community outreach and meetings with the merchants will be conducted before construction begins at the beginning of 2020. And we're looking for construction to start February or March of 2020 and take approximately 2 years. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Looks nice. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any immediate questions for the WGI representative now, or wait?
I got a
we've
few.
got
Just
You want to do it now?
sure.
Yeah, might as well.
Thank you for the presentation. Just had a question relative to the amount of room for the oak trees and that 4-foot strip and future maintenance relative to structural soils or, roots rather, popping up the turn lane or the bike lane rather. Is it thought that with the structural soil, those roots are not going to undermine or heave that?
Yeah, so there's the only locations, so we're using structural soil on the north side of Australian where we're adjacent to some city-owned property and open space, and we're using it for, we have some power line conflicts, so we're using that for some of the smaller trees. In all the other locations, the oaks will be getting the cells, the tree cells, silva cells. So that will go from the bike lane all the way underneath the bike lane and the sidewalk. So with that, we're anticipating that that will, I think it's probably a 15 by 15 foot area of the cells, double stacked. So we're hoping that will alleviate any of the root problems that would occur with the oaks.
Okay, thank you.
Anna Maria, did you have something to finish up on this one, I think?
Yes,
No?
I have.
Okay, and we come back to
our
other comments later.
recommendations,
Okay.
staff recommendations. We have just few notes that we're recommending the applicant or the city to continue working with as part of the design. One is the corner radii of all the intersections. We're recommending the consultant to study each of the intersections, particularly to seek a reduction to the minimum possible according with the technical restrictions. And this is to try to reduce as much as possible the vehicle turning speeds. When the corner radii is smaller, the vehicles turning are slower, so it's safer for pedestrians that are crossing because it gives more time for the drivers to see that somebody's coming. And also it reduces substantially the crossing distance for pedestrians at each of the intersections. What happens is we cannot do kind of the smaller corner radii in all of the intersections due to the type of vehicles that use each of them. So the consultant is doing a specific analysis of each of the intersections to determine which of those can be reduced and which ones have to be a little bit wider.
Okay.
So we're working with them already on that one. The second one that we're recommending is to maintain the sidewalk and bike lane grade elevation at all the private curb cuts. And this is something that we are working very hard with each of the new projects downtown to try to make entrances to parking garages where the sidewalk maintains the elevation. So in this case, we want to try to do the same on those private curb cuts that are throughout the corridor. This will definitely give the perception that the priority is given to the pedestrians over the vehicle and also increase the safety of the corridor. We're also suggesting to extend the proposed medians at Sapodilla Avenue and Rosemary Avenue to provide additional refuge for pedestrians. The project is contemplating adding some medians at the east side of Rosemary and Banyan, and also the west side of Sapodilla and Banyan. They're going to be planted Royal Poincianas in there, so we're suggesting that at this point an additional kind of nose be added so the pedestrians, when they are crossing, they feel they can stop in the median and be safe. So that also is being studied for the turning radius for the vehicles, but we think it's going to be a real possibility to add that. We're also suggesting to add additional bike racks along the corridor. At this point, the project only has some proposed new bike racks at the police station, where there are some bike racks in there, so the project is replacing them. We are suggesting to study other possible locations. There are other locations where new projects are going to add bike racks on the street, on the public realm, but we think there are other opportunities to add a few more. So we're working with the consultant to add a few more bike racks along the public realm. Based on this, with the incorporation of the stated comments, staff recommends approval of Downtown Action Committee case number 1909, and we're really looking forward to get this project rolling.
Yep, good. Yes, it will be nice. Thank you. And thank you to the consultants for the presentation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this case before we have any discussion here? Seeing none, we'll close that public commentary session. Take any questions from anyone for staff or the consultant?
I have a couple questions, one for the consultant. And I think staff just touched on it as far as the medians. And I just happened to bump into a police officer this morning, and we're talking about the project, and I know you presented it to the police department. And he had some concerns with respect to the median on Banyan as they exit the station, and whether there was going to be a median that would block them from going west.
There will not be. We
not be.
worked with them and we reduced that median length. So it was originally designed as just a right in, right out, but through further coordination with them, they indicated that they needed to be able to make lefts out of there. So that
Right.
median, there's 3 driveways, I think, coming out of the police station at that location. So that will be open for them to make the same maneuvers that they're making today.
Okay, great. And then just a question, I guess, over for staff is, just or WGI, how will this be implemented as far as, are you going to close half the street during construction and the other half is going to be open? We're not going to close down Banyan for 2 years, I would imagine. So I'm just curious how that will be implemented.
Hello, good morning. John Surratt, I'm project manager with WGI for the design. As it was mentioned, Whiting and Turner is a contractor in construction activities, so they're devising a phasing plan where they will not close access at any single point in time. They'll maintain access throughout construction, and they'll phase construct. They'll probably go block to block and do section north side, south side as they move along. And we've also worked with operations, Palm Beach County operations, with the courthouse on their movements and facilities. So that's going to be integrated as well. With a process like that, unfortunately, extends the construction time, obviously. You want to shut it down, they can knock it out quickly, but if we phase construct it, that'll extend the time and duration, but it should be open and maintainable throughout construction.
Yeah, we have been talking about that already, but as it was mentioned, the construction company is going to take care of that, preparing the MOT. It has been even discussions of doing basically directional travel. So in the morning, the lane that is open will be only eastbound, and in the afternoon will be westbound, depending on the traffic. So all that is being worked. We're not going to shut down Banyan, and we understand it's a very sensitive issue. So we're going to be working on that very hard.
Thank you.
Just while you're on the construction, issue, just a question for clarification. Do you know if you're going to start at the east end of the corridor or the west end of the corridor at this stage, or?
I think they're starting on the west end at Australian, and then they're gonna work to the east.
Okay,
That was my understanding.
okay.
Because that west piece is probably the easiest to knock out quickly. Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
So anyway, probably from the west is what they're anticipating, and then work their way east.
I have a question related to the traffic. I notice there's a lot of buildings going up in our downtown area, which I would anticipate would result in a lot of additional traffic, and this being one of the main thoroughfares in and out of the city, the narrowing of the lanes and the reduction of some turn lanes. Has there been any traffic studies to determine this will be, the traffic flow will not be impacted or it will be impacted? Has that been looked at?
Yeah, when the project was initiated, they did all the counties, not only current conditions, but the projected, based on the traffic analysis of the new projects that are coming in and certain projections that they prepare. So it is accounted for future traffic also. So that's one of the reasons, like the lanes are basically maintained, the 2 lanes in each direction. The left turn movements that were eliminated, it's because they don't expect any future, they don't have any demand right now, substantial demand that justifies the dedicated left turn, and they do not expect in the future it will happen.
Thank you.
And then when is the completion of construction anticipated?
Right now, it's 2 years from February 2020, so estimated February 2022.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question on the material construction methods at the intersections where you have transition materials. Is it all surface applied at the pedestrian color changes, or are there material changes?
There'll be material changes, so there will be pavers in the intersections for the crosswalks, separated with a header curb from the asphalt. The only intersection that will be colored or painted asphalt is the intersection at Quadrille. That's DOT controlled, and they don't permit the pavers in their right-of-way.
So is that similar to the material change on Flagler where you have the asphalt and then a concrete curb and then the pavers?
Yes.
Okay, is there anything, I mean, just pay attention, because, you know, the way those all settle, it becomes rather jarring for most vehicles, like they turn in at the asphalt and the, I don't know if it's from settlement or expansion or contraction, but just pay special attention, so.
And that's noted, and we have a special design in our plans where we're putting what's called black base, which is an asphalt layer through the entire intersection, so that depending on the type of material that overlays this black base, whether it be asphalt that's connecting to the header curb or the pavers that are going through there, it will primarily eliminate any of the settlement and differences going through the intersections to the header curb.
Okay, I'm sure there's better ways to do it. Oh, and lastly, the question, I love the Royal Point Sienna. Is that Anna Maria going to be a theme on all of those major east-west streets, or I like it, I think it's great on Clematis.
No, it has not been considered as a theme. We selected it. It was suggested because it's a native. No, it's not a native, but it was installed on Clematis and is doing very, very well on Clematis.
Yeah,
So
good.
that was suggested by the
Okay, well, I think that's
designers,
going to
and
be
we-
fantastic. All right, any other?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So, look, I mean, I think this corridor is, and I think the project overall is fantastic. I think you're dealing with a lot of different elements in this corridor compared to some of the other streetscape improvements we've seen downtown. So, kind of like the way you've broken it up into sections and looked at each piece. I definitely agree with staff. I think looking at extending those medians wherever we can is an excellent idea. Obviously, it gets busier the further east you go in the corridor, or particularly around that Quadrille area. So I understand that would be nice to see that median extend the full length of the corridor if we could, but I get that there's other limitations to that as well. Probably the main question I had was kind of that section D area between Dixie and Flagler. There's a lot of other things, construction projects going on there right now. I know the right-of-way is a little more constrained, it's narrower. And so you go from a separated bike lane there to Sharrows. Did you give any consideration to having a separated bike lane and eliminating the on-street parking as an option?
We did, and that was one of the options, and city staff pointed us in the direction of keeping the on-street parking.
Okay.
And the section from Olive to Flagler, where all of the work is happening right now with the Flagler Banyan Square, that's primarily just going to be resurfacing.
Okay.
So the street tree planting and on-street parking, there'll be no changes to that. Most of that work is being done by that developer who's working on that project.
So that section D area, we're not really looking at any changes in sidewalk widths, on-street parking staying as it is.
The biggest change is the elimination of the turn lane at Dixie.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Look, I mean, from a personal perspective, I understand that there's a debate between on-street parking and, you know, separated bike lanes. From my perspective, I would probably have preferred to see you continue that separated bike lane. I feel like that is an important link through to the waterfront. If there was the willingness of staff or, you know, businesses to be willing to give up some on-street parking to accommodate the separated bike lane, that's something I would certainly encourage, you know, staff and the city to continue to look at. But I do get that there's other factors that come into play there too. So yeah, so look, from my perspective, that's probably, you know, the main thing for me is just that final link through to Flagler. If there were options for another way to address it, I'd like to see that. But overall, I think it's a great project, and you know, I think it'll make some good improvements to the street.
Thank you.
One more thing real quick. On the before and after pictures of the police station, which, by the way, looked great, it looked like the after picture did not have power lines. Are they undergrounding the power lines there?
They were, I think those are actually,
This one, this one?
no, those are for the lights. They're
Those are just
they're
wires
not,
for the.
They're just
yeah, they're
for the
wires
street
for the
lights?
street
So
lights.
those would.
So those will be
Those will
gone.
go away?
Yeah, most of the overhead lines that you see along the corridor are for the streetlights. So with the new streetlights, that will all be put underground. The exception of that is the big transmission lines that run between Sapodilla and Tamarind, near the Social Security Administration office. Those go to the substation, and those will remain.
I had one more question, sorry, on the crosswalk that is the first crosswalk east of Tamarind by the Federal Building. That always seems to be a pretty surprisingly, you know, people come out of nowhere and cross right there. Is there
Yeah,
any
so
special
the
changes
mid-block,
there?
so I don't think we have a picture of that, but, so that is there'll be a median there now, so there will be some refuge area for people crossing. It will be striped and upgraded, so it looks more visual crossing. And instead of the constant blinking light that's out there now, it'll be replaced with one that's activated by, you know, when a pedestrian is there crossing the street, they'll activate the light. I think it's similar to the one that they just probably put over by Grandview, south on Parker.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I do have one additional thing. I noticed in community participation, Anna Maria, you mentioned that there's a neighbourhood merchant meeting that was held in August. Were there any outcomes from that meeting that have influenced the ultimate design?
For that one, we sent mailers to the neighbors around the project. At that meeting, we only got attendance from the county, was the only stakeholder that attended. So we discussed with them. We have met the staff and the applicant and the consultant have met with the county several times. They met with the federal courthouse people also that were stakeholders, more like the stakeholders directly on the corridor. When it was noticed, we didn't get any comments. We met, though, provide and obtained comments from Connect West Palm Beach. We had an extensive meeting with them, and they provided comments to the project that we are incorporating as much as possible.
Okay.
So.
All right. And what about the Downtown Neighborhood Association? That's coming up?
The downtown, the Northwest Neighborhood Association was yesterday, I guess. Yes, it was yesterday. Yeah, on Tuesday. So they met with them on part of one of the meetings on the Northwest Neighborhood, and then the Downtown Neighborhood Development Authority is scheduled for next week, for the 15th. So.
And I believe we do have a meeting scheduled with the DNA also upcoming. Vladimir mentioned that.
Yes, and then
I don't
also
know
the
the
project
date.
will be presented to the City Commission for the face of the city, in addition to this.
I have just one other question. The TOD, has this been factored? Are we still thinking that that may happen? Would this change this project at all if that project did move forward? Is it, because obviously that's a pretty big development that is, I don't know,
No.
still looming? I'm not sure.
No, it is considered as part of the analysis because that project is approved. The TOD, you mean the TOD west of the station?
Yes.
Yes, it is approved, so it is accounted as part of the traffic analysis for the project. As it was mentioned, we're not reducing the travel lanes, so the travel lanes are what it is. We're not reducing the capacity of the corridor, so it remains as it is.
Okay, great. Anything else? Someone like to make a motion on the recommendation from our board to,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve DAC case 19-09 with staff recommendations.
Second?
okay, motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much for your combined efforts on that project. The next case we have, let's see, 19-06, another city-initiated request for DAC review, recommendation by City Commission of the streetscape improvements to 7th Street from Rosemary Avenue to Sapodilla Avenue. If you have a presentation, please.
Good morning, Elizabeth Levesque, Urban Design Planner. We have the whole design team, including CRA and engineering, city engineering, and HDR, and they are here to present the case to you, and I'll be available afterwards. I have a short presentation as well.
Good morning, Allison Justice. I'm the Deputy Director of the CRA. I wanted to give this board a brief overview of what's happening in the historic Northwest as far as infrastructure projects and how this project relates to all of the projects happening in the historic Northwest. I know you have seen the Sunset Lounge project, as well as I believe you've already seen the Heart and Soul Park as part of this board. So this is a connection to all of those projects that are happening. This is just an outline of what we're going to talk about today. And as far as the CRA coordinated projects, this is a map of all of the projects happening right around 7th Street. So on 8th and Rosemary, you have the Sunset Lounge between 8th and 9th. The Heart and Soul Park is between 7th and 8th, between Rosemary and Henrietta. And then we have along 7th Street. So these improvements will happen between Rosemary and Sapodilla. And along with those improvements, we are adding a new alley. Right now, we're calling it Heritage Alley. We actually had a community meeting on Tuesday. They've named it what we believe is going to be Stark's Way in honor of some previous owners of the Sunset Lounge. So we've let that is going to be a community naming process, so that will be changed. But as well as that, there'll be some homes built on the uplands. And those homes are replica shotgun houses that were there. They were the frame vernacular, 1,000 square foot homes. And I'll show you kind of what that project is going to look like as well. So you can kind of see how this all ties in together. For the Heritage Alley homes, These are going to be entrepreneurial business opportunities. There'll be 9 separate structures. The structures facing, this is the structures facing the alley. So this is the new alley that's coming back behind. The structures facing the alley will be more modern. They'll be either for offices, businesses. These could be live-work situations, depending on who acquires these. The CRA does own this property. We will lease these businesses with an option to hopefully have the community own these lots in the future. So as you saw in the first plan, they're staggered. So one of the structures will be on 7th and the other is on the alley. So those are the ones on the alley. And then these are the replicas that are on 7th Street. Then, of course, we have this is the elevation of the Sunset Lounge. I know, again, you've all seen this project come forth. A perspective of the Heart and Soul Park, which, again, I know you've seen as well. And then with that, kind of an overview of how it all ties together, I will have, I believe, Tanu Pena, who's our other project manager on this, talk about the project.
Good morning. My name is Tinu Pena. I'm here with Cody Prom. He's with HDR, and he's the project manager with HDR. And I have Connie with me, and she is our landscape architect. So I just want to orient you to the project that we are managing. So we have 7th Street. We're going to be doing a streetscape cross project between Rosemary Avenue and Sapodilla. And we are constructing a new alleyway, which we're calling Heritage Alley as of right now. So that's our focus. To ensure that we engage the community and get their input with this project, we have held various community outreaches to include internal stakeholder engagement. So we've coordinated with staff to make sure that we're meeting the project needs internally to manage and operate this project after it's constructed. And we did inter-project coordination with the other projects that are going on within that whole 7th Street area. So as Allison had mentioned, we've also done community open houses. So we held one in March 2018, November 2018, and we recently held one this week where they had recently decided on the name for the alleyway. So just to wrap you around how we approached this project, as we did with Clematis, we wanted the project to be more pedestrian focused. So we took a more curbless street design approach. We looked at widening the sidewalks to engage that area with the Sunset Lounge and the park that's going in. So you see in our renderings more shaded trees, narrower traffic lanes, as well as connectivity in the design where it comes to the park and engaging people into the alleyway. Because we wanted to have it more of a festival type of approach so we can close down that street and have events to engage the community. So this is the existing condition as it is for 7th Street. As you can see, we have a slew of asphalt, basically wide lanes, no true traffic calming there. We don't have a lot of trees, and we have a poor pedestrian circulation. So what we're doing is to improve that, we've narrowed the lanes and we've increased the sidewalk to make sure we provide pedestrian the ability to be able to move freely, engage in the community, and connect with the park. So this is just a typical section of 7th Street. As you can see, we have a wider sidewalk, which is kind of integrated with the landscaping. I will have Connie discuss in detail the materials there. However, in this corridor here, we are using pavers for the parking, on-street parking, which are actually pervious pavement to allow for percolation during, raining sessions, so that's basically the typical section. So this is a perspective view of 7th Street looking towards Rosemary, and as you can see, our whole point is to engage that corridor to have people to be more actively, involved in, what's going on in the corridor. And this is the intersection of 7th and Heritage Alley. One of the things, like I said from the beginning, is that we wanted to make sure the design was integrated. And for it to be integrated, we thought, how can we take what's happening at the Sunset Lounge and bring it into our project? And that's why you see that record pattern with the logo from the Sunset Lounge integrated into that. So I'm going to touch briefly on the alleyway. So the alleyway itself does not exist as of right now. It is a bunch of vacant lots in which the CRA has acquired. So what we're looking to do is to connect 7th Street. You want to go? Okay, what we're looking to do is connect 7th Street to Zapadilla to provide a pathway for the businesses or homeowners that are going to be located back there, but also to be able to engage business because we currently have an existing restaurant there. So we are, looking to provide some economic opportunity there as well. So this is what we're proposing to how we're constructing the alleyway. Again, the design is going to be curbless, in which we're going to have the parking and sidewalk pretty much be seamless. And in this case, we do have ballers both on 7th and the alleyway to make sure that we are protecting the pedestrians. We're also providing shade trees as well to make sure we have cooling effects, but also to engage the pedestrian to be able to have a better circulation and integrate with the park. This is a typical section of the alleyway, and as you can see, it is a very nice rendering. And this is a perspective view, how we hope for people to be able to engage in the alleyway and just have it be seamless and lively. So I'm going to hand this over to our landscape architect to just go over the material selection, and Cody will be able to answer any technical questions in regards to the design.
Thanks.
Good morning, Connie Fisher with Studio Sprout. The 7th Street sidewalk and parking pavers are in classical patterns to complement the historical nature of this festival street. The sidewalks are a checkerboard pattern of cool and warm gray pavers. The parking is a pervious paver in gray and a herringbone pattern. At every material change, we've used header curbs to help with that transition. The pavers are dark gray to minimize the visibility of wear and tear. These materials are all locally sourced and are used by the city and stockpiled so that it would be easy to switch them out if they needed to be. The intersection is an iconic circular phonographic record design. The circle creates combines a crosswalk with a plaza that helps to connect and create that flow over to the alley from the park. The label is the Northwest Neighborhoods label that they chose, and that will be in stamped and colored concrete with a tabby background. A diagonal pattern of pervious pavers directionally connects the park to the alley. And a random pattern of white reflective pavers are hoping to be somewhat reminiscent of dance steps. And by using the reflective pavers on nighttime festivals, they'll reflect in the dark. The furnishings are high quality, maintainable, and used elsewhere in the city, so they should be easy to switch out, or they're known items. The bollards are the ones that are used on Clematis Street. A 12-inch by 4-foot bench is meant for festival seating. The bottom of it would be concrete, so very durable with an Ipe cap. And the bike, trash, and bollards are all used by the city, and I don't know if they're stockpiled, but they're known items. The lights are the ones that are used on Clematis Street. They're on 7th Street and go with a historical theme. The lights on the alley are the ones used in the park to make that connection with the park a little bit more modern. And then at either end of the alley, we wanted to use sort of a drumstick vertical light feature, and so we used this tall vertical light. On Heritage Alley, again, we have sort of the small dimension festival seating. And then at the intersect, or, where the alley turns, so it's a visual and sort of social accent on the access, we are proposing these Tembo's Diatonic, which is an interactive musical outdoor instrument that has muted sounds, but it does create sounds and should become a gathering point. Whoa. I don't know how that happened. Sorry, I must have pushed something bad. How do I get back? Oh, sorry. Keep my hands away from that. Oh, I need to go back one more. No, okay, that's it. Okay. So in order to accommodate what the Gill report said, which was a lot more shade and to introduce some flowers, our main street tree is the pink tabebuia with mid-block accents of Queen's crepe myrtles. Large oaks will define and create some canopy on the corners. On the alley, we used green buttonwoods and gumbo limbos just because they're sort of a jazzy form. And also used a couple other trees mixed in so that it was sort of a mixed up alley sort of feeling with smaller white geigers and silver buttonwoods. The tree layout are long linear planters, and we are using extensive areas of soil cells, which we're kind of going back and forth with the contractor. The idea would be to use the soil cells under the sidewalk to connect to the adjacent residential units, which are softscapes, so that the roots can have a large area to grow. Otherwise, underplantings are low maintenance, trimmable shrubs, green buttonwood, I'm sorry, not green buttonwood, green island ficus, ilex schillings, and Pringle's podocarpus. In a few areas where we can't plant, like around transformers and where we wanted an accent, we used perennial peanuts so that we wouldn't have any mowing and to help with the maintenance.
So we are still in design, and we hope to have the design completed by the end of this month. We'll be wrapping up soon, and we're actually working with our contractors so that we can break ground in February of 2020. We anticipate this project ending in 2020 of October. So we are requesting approval. We have answered some design questions that staff has presented to us to make sure that the bollards are not impeding accessibility for pedestrians. They had asked whether we're going to be metering the parking on 7th and Alley. As of right now, we're not, but we are going to study to see if there is a need. And if there is no need, we will not be metering the parking in that area. As far as bike racks are concerned, we are proposing bike racks on 7th and Heritage Alley. And so we are requesting approval. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Nice presentation. Looks very nice. Let's see. Anyone in the audience want to comment on this case before we go into? Oh, wait, we still got some more here from Elizabeth. Sorry.
That's okay. I don't have much to say. Their presentation was very thorough. Just a couple of staff regulatory items that we have to address. We won't go over the request. Just to show you the zoning designation of the properties, the CRA-owned properties, and the one property owned by the Queen of Sheba restaurant are within the Northwest District Residential, and one property, which will be the entrance to the Heritage Alley from 7th Street, is Northwest District 2. So again, I don't need to go over that, actually. So just one of the recommendations that staff had, the one recommendation in our staff report. So this is showing 7th Street, parking outlined in blue, and there's landscaping in green and the sidewalk in orange. Is the bollard placement was in the pathway leading from the parking onto the sidewalk. So we've just recommended, and Tanu has actually already addressed that that's going to be something that's modified, so we make sure we have better access, because right now where the bollard was, there was only about maybe 2 or 3 feet on each side, so we want to make sure that ADA requirements were met and better, so we're working together with them on that. Generally, just staff considers the design of 7th Street to be a good foundation for the walkable community desire of downtown areas. The Yield Alley, which is designed for about 10 miles per hour speed, emphasizes hierarchy of pedestrians over vehicles, which is something that is great for this location, and to have access for the businesses that will be along the alleyway. The connectivity of the designed intersection is going to create a safer crossing for pedestrians that are coming from Sunset Lounge or the park onto 7th Street or into the alley. And staff feels that the design of the alley and the enhancements to 7th Street will be a great addition to the neighborhood that generally sees less development than other parts of the downtown. So understanding that the presented design is conceptual in some parts, and there may be some modifications through permitting as we see, maybe some items don't work as well as originally thought, and that's constant design phase. Staff recommends approval with the aforementioned recommendation of modifying the location of the bollards along 7th Street. And that is all that I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Apologies for cutting you off there, but yeah, it looks good. Again, always great to see the teamwork between staff and the consultants for what will be another nice project. So, concludes the presentation. Any public commentary? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public discussion. Have any comments from commission members for the staff or the design team?
I do. Thank you for that presentation. I really want to commend the design effort. I really like the sort of physical manifestation of all the musical concepts. You know, the record is really cool in the intersection. I like that, and the different elements. One suggestion I have, not only for this project, but really throughout the city, is with regard to hardscape and header curbs, specifically to pavers. In my recent experience with massive streetscape projects and all the paver contractors we've been dealing with, there seems to be a shift to a better detail to basically eliminate concrete header curbs and replace them with essentially mimicking that concrete header curb, but just using a paver with that color. And the reason for that is when concrete header curbs are used, you basically disturb that contiguous compacted subbase, and that's the whole key to successful long-term paver use. What happens is the contractors can simply not achieve the compaction at that edge, and ultimately you have that settlement and those sort of humps that you talked about. So in many streetscape examples I've been involved in up at Palm Beach Gardens, such as Alton, and even if you look at some older projects such as PGA National, dealing with the paver companies and the paver contractors, there's a trend to basically get away from header curbs, overpour the asphalt, cut it back, and then put in that paver band so you leave that compacted subbase undisturbed, and that provides a much better long-term use and seems to be the trend. So I would just invite perhaps you to look at that and investigate that relative to the best possible long-term detail. But it looks great. Thank you very much.
Hello, committee members. My name is Cody Parr. I'm with HCR Design Project Manager, and to address your comment, we have used a buried mortar subset base to eliminate headers near detectable surfaces for ADA compliance. I'd like to take your recommendation back to the design team and see if we can eliminate them further, though, in areas that aren't so critical, but we still want to maintain a nice even surface.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I do. Look, again, great project. I think, you know, a really great addition to the Northwest neighbourhood, and it's nice to see all these pieces coming together. You know, the work everyone's done on this is fantastic, to the point that it's rare I probably ask these kind of questions, and maybe I'm asking it more as a father of a young daughter than as a planner. But the Tembus diatonic, tell me a bit more about it, what it does, how it operates, what is it exactly, and how does it work? I've probably got a few questions about it. So.
I do have a video of it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I probably don't need the video, but if you can just, you know, I'm just interested to know what it is.
It's not in here. I have a video. It's queued up on my iPad if you want to see it. But basically that comes with a paddle that has a pad on it. So it's not like you're clanging on something. The pad is some kind of fabric.
Okay.
And then you hit the bottom pieces, or, you know, where the pipe curves up. And it's a diatonic scale, so you can actually play music on it.
Okay.
But since the paddle has this fabric on it, it's not clangy, but it's sort of a muted thing. And
how do you deal with maintenance? Like, again, I'm thinking of young kids and, you know, their tendency to stuff things in holes. You know, that looks like quite a wide opening. Does it have the tendency to accumulate like water at the bottom if it rains, or what happens if material and trash ends up in there? How do you maintain that, you know, so that it doesn't just become an ineffective piece of, you know, and doesn't achieve its intention?
This is sold by a company called Streetscapes, and they are they say they're vandal proof. I did not think about the rain question, so I do need to investigate that. I believe there's a screen where that bottom piece comes up, so that, you know, you can't stuff trash in it. But to keep the tonic qualities, I don't think that's a solid thing, so rain probably does get in there.
Yeah, look, I mean, yeah.
And that might affect the.
They must
that's
have just a simple weep hole at the bottom. I'm hoping they thought about it before they manufactured these.
If we do decide to go with this is something we will have to definitely discuss with our Public Works and Parks and Rec, since they're going to be maintaining this, to make sure that we do clean that out if need be, to make sure it continues to work and be safe for the kids.
And that was going to be my suggestion. Is I'm not against the concept at all. I think it's fantastic and interactive, but, you know, I think a good maintenance program needs to be there for it to continue to be effective. So, yeah.
Agreed. All right. Brad?
I have a quick question. I can't really discern the length of this alleyway. Is it long? Is it a short walk? I can't figure it out.
Yeah, the length is probably about 200 to 300 feet total.
With including the curve?
So yes,
One end to the other?
Along the center line.
Okay. And can you just tell me briefly, I think you said the people we anticipate who will use this path, maybe there's a restaurant nearby. We hope businesses come to those structures that were shown staggered. Who would be the people who would use this as we see today?
Yeah. Okay. Right. So the people who would be utilizing the 7th Street and Heritage Alley corridor are the folks who would be attracted by the adjacent Heart and Soul Park, the Jazz Lounge, and these Heritage Alley homes and businesses. So it's the users of the nearby facilities. You know, right now this is sort of an abandoned area. There's not a lot of activity, which makes it easiest for us to redevelop, but I think it's definitely going to be, its success is going to be dependent on the adjacent projects that are going to be giving the people a reason to be here in the first place.
Okay, thanks. That's kind of what I thought, that there wasn't much there now, but we're hoping that the adjacent projects are successful.
Yeah, and I believe all of the construction projects are generally scheduled to occur around the same time, so that we're not looking at trying to attract folks to an open construction site for a few years.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that was my question. So the Heart and Soul Park and the construction of the homes and Heritage Alley will all be intended to beginning of next year, February or so. Is that the goal?
Yes, the Sunset Lounge is actually, they got their notice to proceed this last month, so they are working now. Heart and Soul Park and Heritage Alley are all being completed by the same contractor, so they are scheduled to begin in February with both of those projects. They're both at about 90% design right now, so we're on the same schedule for both of those. The uplands, the homes, probably will have to be completed towards the end of the project because we can't have them, obviously, we have two projects going on at the same time, so.
Great, yeah, no, it looks fantastic. Can't wait to see it begin and start activating that area. So kudos to everyone involved.
Yeah, it looks nice. I don't have any real questions. I think it's a great project. The architecture's nice, the planting's nice. Just a specific question to Connie. The tababuyas, have you had success with those? I've just seen a lot where they get kind of brittle. I don't know if it's the quality of the stock from the nurseries or...
Actually, it was a tree that the city forester recommended, so I believe he's had good success with them in the city.
I just always thought they were brittle in terms of hurricanes and
you
stability
might
and-
be thinking of yellow tababuyas. These are pink tababuyas, which is
There's enough
a
of a
little bit
difference
more
other than just the color?
structurally sound. It has a different structure.
I'm sure you know. Anyways, yeah, good, great project.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Anyone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for approval of DAC case number 19-06 with staff recommendations.
Second?
Okay, motion second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none? All right, motion carries. Thanks. Thank you. Good project. Good luck with it. Okay, let's see. I think we have one more here, don't we? Okay, now move on to code revision case 19-06, a request for text amendment to Chapter 94 zoning and land development regs. And if we could kindly have staff's presentation.
Good morning, Ana Maria Aponte, City of Center for the record. So as mentioned, it's a city-initiated request for a text amendment to Chapter 94, Zoning and Land Development Regulations, Article 4, Section 94-109, Definitions, and Section 94-132, Transfer of Development Rights Program, and Figure 4-35, TDR Sending and Receiving Sites, to basically clarify certain regulations and update the eligible sending and receiving sites within the downtown area. As you mentioned, we have been doing this for the last couple of months, bringing in front of you several clarifications and changes, smaller changes to the code for things that we identify as we go through the process, things that are not working and need to clarify or refine better. So this is one of those cases. We have two main changes. The first one is in the section 94-109 under the definition section is within the height definition. It's some additional language to allow up to 10% additional height for certain uses, such as government uses like courthouses or other civic uses like museum, planetaries, or auditoriums. This case was brought to staff specifically by the county, and they are projecting a future courthouse within the downtown area. The courthouse that exists right now, it's part of a planned development, but the site that they are expecting to build a new courthouse, and this, I'm talking maybe 20 years from now, will be the parking lot between 2nd and 3rd, Dixie and Olive. There's a parking lot right now in there. That is the future location of a new courthouse for the county. And they are, of course, they are programming way in advance. And one of the issues that they have is the courthouse floors are kind of generally taller than a typical residential floor. So they're expecting that the building that they are gonna build will go above the allowable height right now. Not by much, but by some. So they basically approached the city and requested the city to make some allowance to go above the height permitted. As you know, the height in the downtown is very sensitive and very strict. We have maximum number of floors and maximum number of feet of the overall height for the building, something that the board cannot grant a variance for. So we suggested that we made special provisions for those type of uses that may need additional, just a slightly additional height because of the nature of the use, and that was the case of the courthouse. So I'm just gonna do an example in here. The building, their zoning designation is Quadrille Garden District 10. The maximum height allowed in that district is 128 feet. So we are crafting a regulation that allows them to obtain an additional 10% overall of the above the maximum allowed height to accommodate those flexibility. This will be applicable if they do the base or even if they decide to use the TDR program and go a little bit higher. And it will be basically for those type of uses, like government uses such as courthouses. And we included museums, planetariums, and auditoriums that we are thinking maybe something comes on that sense. They may need something, so we included in there as part of that. The other changes are all located within the Transfer of Development Rights Program, Section 94-132. The first one is to clarify, or all of them are basically to clarify provisions. One is regarding the historic and landmark standing sites, and is basically to clarify that when the sites are designated historic, they usually have to do some renovations to ensure that the structure is maintained property and will be protected. So the code previously say that the improvements have to be completed and they have to receive certificate of occupancy. We noticed that in some of these cases, the renovations are minor renovations that basically do not trigger a certificate of occupancy. It triggers a certificate of completion or other type of final approval. So we're just changing the language to say that all improvements or renovations shall be passed all applicable final building permit inspections to cover all our bases in there. We're also including some language to clarify some possible cases for the repurchase of TDRs. And this is a particular case that was brought to our attention for the Hibiscus House, that is where the bed and breakfast is located at 213 South Rosemary Avenue. The owners of this property approached the city with kind of basically the question of if they could repurchase the TDRs that they have sold. These structures, the way you see it right now, these two buildings were actually not in this location originally. They are not the original location. They were brought to the sites from other places in the city. So they moved the structures to this site. They designated the structures in 1999. And then in 2004, they transferred its development capacity. They transferred 40,000 square feet of their development capacity actually to the Herrick Hotel. That still has not been developed, but that's beyond that. The remaining development capacity on the site, it's only 1,910 square feet plus the square footage of the existing structure. So for a total only of 7,200 square feet. The current owners were asking if they could repurchase the TDR. So we work with Frederick Midner. She's here to answer any questions. She's the historic preservation planner of what are the options of these and how this could happen. So the analysis basically was considering these structures are not in their original location. We are suggesting adding language that says that if they decide to relocate these structures to another site, they could repurchase the TDRs to make the site again available for future development. And this will basically only happen for those structures that, for one reason or another one, have been moved and are not in their original location. These are some pictures of the structures when they were moved to the site. The language also includes some provisions that say that the buildings will have to be relocated and successfully relocated and renovated in a new location. So the concept will be they will have to move the structures, place it in another site, rehabilitate it, and having them ready to be occupied in another location before they can repurchase the TDRs and make their site within the downtown area again basically whole as the base development capacity again. The other changes are to clarify how the TDR calculation is done, and just some basic language to specifically state that the calculation shall subtract the total square footage of the existing structures on site. That's the way we have been doing it, but the language on the code was not that clear, so we're just clarifying that. Also, that state that the TDR calculation only includes the eligible historic structure, And so in this case is when you have a larger site that has, for example, a building and then a surface parking lot next to it. So in essence, as an initial concept, the TDRs will be granted only for the existing structure, not for the additional site, unless the historic preservation planner determines that the surrounding land is it's important for the context of the building. And then in that case, the calculation will be done for the entire property. Also, clarified that the TDRs are given as a landmark property by the city. This is the additional incentive for the landmark designation, will not subtract any square footage of the existing structures on site for that second set of TDRs that are given to the property owners. In addition to that, we did an exercise to update the TDR map, the figure 4-35, that includes the TDR sending and receiving sites, to basically identify additional structures within the downtown that are eligible for historic designation. So they were added to your to the map. And I put there's an exhibit in your desk in front of you that has the updated map and one updated language also that was not included in the staff report. We also are adding a new table, table 4-59A, eligible TDR sending sites, that is basically listing all those eligible sending sites that are identified on the figure 435, and just to make it easier for people to know which ones are the structures that are eligible for designation. This is a new table. We had this kind of as part of the staff material, but it was never included in the code. We're now adding it to the code. This doesn't mean that if a structure is not included in this list, they could not proceed with the designation. Even if they're not in this list and at some point we identify other structures, they can proceed with the designation. And this could happen, for example, in the Providencia Park or the Brasford Park neighborhoods, where we did not identify all the structures that were eligible, but a property owner could come and approach the city and say, I want to designate my structure, and even though if it is not in the list or in the map, it could still move ahead with the process and be eligible for designation and for TDRs if applicable. These are some of the examples of the structures that we added in here. The one on 831 North Olive is an old flower shop. It's right now looks boarded up, but it's a very interesting structure. The owner was interested in designating the structure. There's one house on Daytura Street, the Federal Courthouse building. It's a very interesting structure and worth it of historic designation, and some other structures throughout downtown. But based on that, staff recommends approval for Code Revision Case 1906 as presented by staff. The approval is based on the finding that the petition meets all 8 of the requirement standards found in Section 9432 of the LDRs. The proposed amendments will be presented to the Planning Board and the City Commission in the next month. That concludes the staff presentation. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. All seems fairly logical. Does anyone have any specific questions for Anna Maria?
Yeah, Anna Maria, the change to the building height for government uses. So, I mean, there's always the consequence of the consequence. We're talking about the courthouse, but what other buildings could this affect downtown? Like, I'm just trying to think of any unforeseen situations that, you know, that maybe we don't know is coming up. The thing that comes to mind for me is, does a standalone parking garage, say the parking garage for the courthouse, count as a government use, and therefore they could get another 10% in height, therefore go above the maximum allowed by code?
I will say no, because the parking level does not need any additional height for its use.
Okay.
But if you want, we can clarify that parking garages are not included. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
We don't want parking garages to be exceeding the height.
Yeah, I think that would, you know, just as a coverall, I think would be useful. And then secondly, just a clarification for the TDR. The change you're making for the repurchase of square footage, are they only repurchasing if it hasn't been used elsewhere, or if they've sold TDRs and they get used, can they still repurchase from the bank?
Yes, the concept, if they will basically have to go out into the market and find TDRs from another historic building and bring them back to the site.
Okay.
So it is like a regular TDR transaction, with just allowing them to bring them back if they move their buildings.
Okay. No? I had a question for Ms. Mittner. So with this issue of relocating a structure that's been relocated, that's not in its historical location,
Yes.
do you guys care where that structure would go? Would it have to be within the downtown or the county or?
So we've
State.
had that discussion that ideally it is in the downtown, or if it was not originally in the downtown, a representative context. So for example, the properties on Fern and Quadrille are also not in their original location. Those came from Hillcrest. So a southern residential neighborhood would probably be the most appropriate site for those to be relocated to. So we're not limiting it to downtown, but the language will be successful relocation to a acceptable site, which is what the Historic Preservation Board will have to approve.
Versus yesteryear village?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's not on the table.
That's what I was getting at. Okay,
Right.
good. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
I forgot to ask, anyone in the audience want to comment on this case? Okay, seeing none. Any other comments from any board members?
I just had a technical question, just wondering, the case number, the Heritage Alley case number was 1906, and this is code revision 1906, is that just two different?
Yeah, the Heritage
Okay.
Alley was Downtown Action Committee case number 1906. This is code revision case 1906.
Thank you.
Yeah, it gets me confused all the time, but it happens frequently.
Yeah, they do. Okay, all right. We lost Michael.
If we
When it
make a
comes back.
motion, do I need to include the request to amend the definition to include the
Yes, please.
include the exclusion?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do we want to wait for Michael? I think we can go ahead.
Go ahead and make it. He
All right.
can come back.
I would like to make a motion to approve code revision case 19-06 based on the findings that the petition meets all 8 of the required amendment standards found in section 94-32 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations, with the proposed amendment to the government use definition in section 94-109 to require that government uses such as courthouse buildings and civic uses such as museums, planetariums, and auditoriums, then in parentheses, excluding parking garages, may exceed the maximum height allowed in a sub-district by 10%.
Okay. There's a motion with some
Second?
recommendations, clarification. There's a second. Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good work. Good work. Let's see. I think that was the last case. So, yep. Any other business? Any old business? Any other discussions? My only comment was I'm glad Nick clarified some of the options for these header curbs, which I didn't have the technical term right, but just to avoid what we, I think, see occurring all along Flagler, where you have those material transitions. I don't know if it becomes a citywide engineering component to all streetscape conditions, but it'd be nice to have consistency throughout any new city-initiated street projects.
Thank you. Yes, very good comment. We will definitely bring it back to the engineers in the city staff and the consultants to work on those concerns.
Okay, great. Anything else?
I just had one real quick question, and I'm not sure if this is germane to the downtown, but behind the School of the Arts, the Dreyfus School of the Arts, as you're going on Tamarind, there always seems to be sort of like junk piles of band equipment and wood and signs and everything. Is that something that's part of what we can maybe?
Yes, by the theater, right on.
Yes.
Yes, it's part of the School of the Arts.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we don't have any jurisdiction on school property. We can probably contact them and talk with them to just be better neighbors, but.
Just slap them on the
Yes.
wrist.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll adjourn today's meeting. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.